All right, guys, we are back from the weekend. I hope you guys all had a good weekend. I'm getting a little chilly down here in the Atlanta area. That's for sure. We're definitely in winter off-season training time. Um, got a lot to cover today, guys. Obviously, you saw the tweet earlier, what we're going to be covering. And the thing is this, we're getting a lot of reactions now from coaches and what they're saying. You guys heard from Zeke Pinkham last week on a lot of the things that we'd been saying, right? No longer recruiting for the future. You're recruiting for 1 year at a time. All of a sudden you got three performers that got drafted or graduated. You're most likely not filling those holes with high school players. You're filling those holes with portal guys. Like Zeke said, you're going to see a lot of high school arms are still going to be attractive, right? Because they're young. They have development they can make. They can make big strides. Pitching, a lot of times you get a kid more physical in the first 3 months. He's going to add velo, improve his command. So you're still going to see high school. And this is something I tell prospective clients and clients I work with. I said, listen, the position players are the ones that are really getting hurt by all this stuff. The pitchers, again, are they feeling it a little bit? Sure. But like I said, guys, it's not all about velocity anymore. What did Zeke Pinkham say last week? Throw your off speed for strikes. You got to fill up the zone. We can't afford to have a guy that comes in and walks the house. Just like we've been saying. And I get so much hate on social media, especially Instagram, for saying that. Well, velocity is important. And again, it is, right? Like if you're throwing 82 and you throw a lot of strikes, you're not going to be going D1, right? And so you're kind of straw manning my argument. But what I'm saying is, if you can throw 88, 89, and you got 2 off speed that you can command for strikes whenever you want, dude, you are a weapon at the highest levels of Division I. Canes is of course, Canes the first guy to be chatting. He's got to be the one to break the ice, and I appreciate it, Canes. First base only are really hurting, I think. You can put anyone at first base. Yeah, it's the corner positions, right, Canes? It's first base, right field, left field, third base. Because, again, shortstops, true shortstops, way harder to find, especially ones with bats. So if you're a high schooler and you're really good bat, really good, you can pick it at short, you're going to have options. Center fielder, same thing. Second baseman, same thing. Catcher, same thing. A lot of third basemen are basically just high school shortstops that couldn't cut it at short, and they're moved to third. Right? First baseman, 100%. When I see kids, when I talk to kids, I tell them, man, make yourself more versatile. If you're a first baseman only, no one's recruiting those guys unless you're just one of the top hitters in the country, because they can go find a first baseman. Every first baseman in college baseball is hitting 10 plus home runs. So like they can get that guy in the portal. They don't need to go get a high school kid. They need high upside, high versatility position players. And then pitchers. We were talking about it a little bit with Zeke, but what's the roster going to be, the makeup going to be on the 34-man roster? How many guys are you going to travel with? Are you going to travel with 19 pitchers and 15 position players? I think that makes sense. I mean, you're gone for 3 days. You maybe go 20 pitchers and 14 position players. So you got 8 guys. You got two super utility guys, a catcher, and then something else, right? You probably have to bring 2 catchers, just like worst case scenario. You don't want to be stuck without a catcher. That's why if you're a super utility guy and you can catch, you're valuable now. I think the sweet spot's going to be 15 position players and 19. But I could see easily guys bringing 20 pitchers, because it's just like there's no longer 2-1 games, guys. It's Friday night when you're facing an ace. I mean, it ends up being like 8-7 or 9-8. When I was playing, that was a 1-0 ball game or 2-1 ball game, 3-2 ball game. You weren't using your starters. Were going till the 6th or the 7th, and then you were using 1 or 2 bullpen arms. That was it. And a lot of times back then, the guy I played my freshman year, our Friday night starter, Mark Pope, I think he threw 7 consecutive complete games, and they were low pitch count complete games. It's not like they were 200 pitch complete games. He was very efficient, threw a lot of strikes with a lot of pitches. So we got something from Buck B here. Welcome to the chat, Buck B. A coach once told me an old adage: I recruit 7 shortstops. My best shortstop plays shortstop. My second best plays center field. My third best plays second, and so on. It's a euphemism, but it is that's exactly right. Buck, that's not an adage. It is an old adage, but that's still how they recruit, right? You recruit the premium positions. Because at worst case scenario, if he can't cut it at short at the college level, he's going to be playing third, or he's going to play second, or he's going to play short or second or center field, like you said. The reality is that most high school shortstops are good runners, or at least like we're talking about the high level shortstops. They're good runners, and they're the most athletic guy on the team, so they can play all over the field. You run into, and this is why you see a lot of shortstops committed, multiple center fielders committed, because the center fielders can play the other 2 spots. Shortstops can play all over the infield. And you can't over recruit third basemen and corner infielders because what happens when the center fielder goes down? Who's playing center? A shortstop goes down. Who's playing short? So 100%, it's a euphemism. It's an old adage, but that's still how they're recruiting today. On defense, they want athletes, and running is back at a premium. We tell our kids it's either speed or strength. You need to work on and differentiate with 100%. 100%. I mean, speed. The thing is, in college baseball, and you know this, Buck. I mean, college baseball, catchers aren't as good. Pitchers are obviously, coaches are pretty on top of pitchers at controlling the run game, but catchers are not as good. And I mean, the speed game. You see schools like Wofford, Todd Interdonato at Boston College, what he's going to have up and running this season. I'm actually really excited because you could tell last year he didn't have all the guys he needed at Boston College in his first year. But certainly this coming year and next year, when he's got a full lineup of guys that buy into that system and really are recruited specifically for that system, I'm interested to see what they do in the ACC. But speed is definitely coming back 100%, especially what you're seeing with pro ball, with now they can only pick off twice in a row. It's coming back into the game. And then, of course, power. And the funny thing is, you don't really even need legit power anymore with how the ball's traveling in college baseball. You can have below average power at the professional level and hit 10 plus home runs. I mean, that's just how it is now. It's harder for scouts to really get an idea of who has legit power and who doesn't. Because, like I've told you guys a bunch, I mean, Aaron Judge in 2013, when I was still in college, I mean, he hit 12 home runs. And look what he does now in the big leagues. Daniel Palka, a guy I played with, was third in the country and hit 17. 17 would be like 100th in the country now. And that guy hit 27 bombs in the big leagues his rookie year. So it's just power. It's a lot. It's really, you don't need to find power. It's not as hard to find power now because the ball just travels. Everybody, like I said, if you have like 40 grade power on the professional scale, you're going to hit 10 plus home runs in college. But 100% agree with what you're saying. So we got a lot of good stuff to talk about, guys. What coaches are saying is a great new article. I got a video coming out later today that's going to cover it in detail, but I wanted to still share it with you guys because I think it's interesting. I'm going to bring it up on screen now, but we'll go back up to the top here. So a lot of coaches in this article giving their 2 cents or 10 cents on this. And essentially, the gist of the beginning of the article is college baseball for the last 5-6 years has been growing at an extreme rate. Way more TV viewers, way more in-person attendance. Money is flowing into college baseball, not only from the TV deals and everything, but attendance. So schools have way more money at their disposal now. That's why you are seeing a lot of schools, like we talked with Zeke Pinkham at Kent State, who's a mid-major program in the Midwest. And he said, we're going to try to get to 18 or 19 scholarships. Right? And so there's more money coming in now. And let's see what Canes has something to say here before we start into this article. I'll be traveling to Boston College to watch us play them in April. There's a special venue where playing in that is making me go. Are you guys playing? Are they playing in Fenway, Canes? I'm guessing that's where they'll be playing. I know they do that. If they do that every once in a while, especially like if the big league team's on the road. So according to the American Baseball Coaches Association Executive Director, college baseball, in my opinion, has never been better with attendance and certainly TV viewership. 6 months later, there's nothing that should suggest that growth could be stopping. So we go down here. From Kevin O'Sullivan at University of Florida, one of Kane's favorite coaches. I do look at baseball as a sport that is growing in popularity. I don't know why they're trying to take that away from us in terms of numbers and that type of thing. The concern, according to O'Sullivan and many of his peers, is that college baseball's looming changes stand to increase what they feel has been steadily intensifying chaos across their sport. Right? So you had the portal 3 years ago, and then NIL right after that. And now you have roster size changes, roster set date changes, winter portal period becoming a bigger deal. And what you guys will see is funny is that in this article, a lot of the stuff I've been talking with you guys about is what all these coaches are concerned about. Okay. And Kane's right here. Hasn't been announced, but yes. Shout out to Miami national champion Alex Cora. Yeah, that probably has something to do with it, right? That'll be sick for you to go to, Canes. There's nothing like Fenway. I've been there a few times, and when my dad was working with the Boston Red Sox in 2018 when they won the World Series, me and my wife went up there for the ALCS against the Astros, and it was electric. And it's just the stadium is just, I mean, it's just so cool. It's just so unique, and they don't make stadiums like that anymore. All these new stadiums are really nice, but there's just not that. There's not that uniqueness to them. They all kind of look the same, if you guys know what I mean. So the NCAA currently prohibits baseball players from changing schools mid-year, right? If you're a Division I player and you transfer, you're not eligible at another Division I in the spring, so it's not really advisable to transfer to Division I. Kevin O'Sullivan, everything is supposed to be based on student-athlete welfare, right? I don't know why they're doing this. I don't agree with it. I'm not saying we should have an unlimited number of players, but 40 was not bad. If nobody gets hurt, you're going to have to get rid of some players, and that's where I think the path becomes a little challenging, Fresno State pitching coach Troy Buckley said. And again, guys, so what he's saying is you're going to bring in more than 34 in the fall because you may have two guys go down with season-ending injuries, and that you can't afford to just bring in 34, and then you're already down to 32, and you're 2 weeks into the fall, and you still got to weather the rest of the fall with injuries, early spring, and then the season with injuries. So you're going to bring in more than 34, but if no one gets hurt, then it's like, well, we brought in all these guys, and we're going to have to cut them. Non-Power 4 schools might not have the funding to carry more than 34 players throughout their fall workouts, while high major programs could choose to hoard talent only for those athletes to be stuck with nowhere to go if they're ultimately cut. From Canes here, Miami hasn't played in an MLB ballpark out of the state of Florida since the 80s when we played in the Twins Dome for a tournament. Yeah, that's going to be awesome. I mean, I really like these early season, like the Astros always host like a round robin type tournament between Power 4 big time schools. That's always really exciting at the beginning of the year. So I'm hoping you start seeing more of that like locally. Like Georgia Tech, Georgia used to play at Turner Field in the Brave Stadium, and I think they played a little bit in the new stadium, but now that series, the final game is played in Gwinnett, their AAA stadium, which it's like, that's cool. But you'd kind of like to see it get played in the Major League Stadium. You just have to know what you're getting into, Southern Miss coach Christian Ostrander said. Meaning, as a player, you better have a good idea of what you're getting into. You better have someone around you, close to you, that knows the coaches, knows how they recruit, knows usually how many players they bring in, and also knows your talent level and gives you kind of an outside objective evaluation. Because a lot of players and parents just don't really understand. And of course, I mean, they don't have the tool set to be like, well, my son's got a really good chance of playing. It just may not be the case. So if you're looking for help, scan the QR code right above the screen. If you're a player or you're a parent looking for help in recruiting, scan that QR code and fill out the form, and we'll meet with you, give you a free evaluation of where we think you're at, where you could potentially be, and see if it's a fit that if you guys want to work with us. There could be ways to optimize the system while keeping NCAA's 34-man roster and December 1st cut deadline. Remember what I said, guys, about mid-year transfers, just like last week. According to O'Sullivan, allowing mid-year transfers could be a starting point, though he and others pointed out that a second window could also be somewhat detrimental, especially in the pay-for-play era of college athletics when players could be enticed away from their teams. So this is a scenario, guys. NCAA starts feeling the heat because of this cut date, and players getting screwed over and having to transfer while they're taking finals, and they got a month to find a new home. All of a sudden, they say, you know what, we're going to allow mid-year transfers to be eligible at another Division I school. Well, then what happens is you bring in, let's say you have, D1 Baseball or Baseball America or many of the really good publications come in and talk with coaches and do an evaluation of the team and send out their fall report. And yeah, the coaches are saying, and from what those guys saw, this freshman, he's going to be in the builder lineup. They think he's going to be a future star. Well, then the portal opens and he's not getting NIL money from his school, and he's not even on a full ride like a lot of these schools may be able to offer soon. And now he starts hearing little whispers about a school that would give him a lot of NIL money and a bigger scholarship. and he goes in the portal. And so now you recruit a kid, and he does so well in the fall. He goes in the portal, and now he's at a different school, maybe in your conference, and now you're having to play against him, which would be just, again, it'd be a nightmare in college baseball. So Canes, I truly think it's going to be status quo still for the big boys. They are still going to bring in 40, 50 guys and see who's the best of the bunch. And again, yeah, I mean, that's probably going to be the case, Canes. And again, as a player, like you can't complain as a player if you made a decision and you knew they had 18 commits and you committed. Like you knew the situation, you knew that, man, they're going to have to cut like probably 10 of us, at minimum 10 of us. Right? So that's what Ostrander's saying up here is like, you got to know what you're getting into. If the players want to come in and compete, even though the 26 class will have 15, 16 kids, that's on you. Like I just said, Canes, I completely agree. It's one thing if, scenario is different, but if you're committing and the school already has a bunch of kids committed in that class, I get it. You're betting on yourself, but it may be a losing bet, and a high percentage of them will be losing bets. Maybe the solution is to have a limit on how many guys you could add in January. So if they do allow midseason transfers, maybe you make it to where schools can only add a low number of guys, so they can't just go out and get the best freshmen from every school. The schools have a lot of NIL money. Are athletic scholarships secured before or after December 1st? Could a team dangle a scholarship in front of a kid and then pull it back after he gets cut December 1st? Or is it given only after players made the team? That's a good question, BA. And obviously, under the old rules, that scholarship you sign, you at least would get it for that first semester. And then ultimately, if you get cut, they can take that away. I mean, they have the power. They already do that a lot, whereas... Like, I'll give you an example. My freshman year, I was on 25% athletic scholarship. I went on to be first team All-ACC, freshman All-American, and that next year they bumped me up to 50%. So that 25% had to come from somewhere, meaning a kid that probably came onto campus as a freshman and had 25% got it taken away because he wasn't going to be seen as a contributor on the team anymore. But with these new rules, it's interesting. Is the school still going to be liable to cover the second semester if the kid gets cut? I would love if you can have 34 on aid and you can declare that 34 by December 1st, Ostrander said, but you can have 6 players coming in, not on athletic aid, and if they don't make your roster, they still can grow, still can participate, they still can get on the field and practice with you, they can still get with your strength coach. So guys, like the rules right now, if you're not on that roster in the spring, you can't work out with the team. And again, if you're red-shirted, it's one thing, but you see a lot about this gray shirt. If you're gray-shirted, you can't work out with the team. You can't practice with the team. And so you can't be on the field with the team. And so what Ostrander's saying, I think, makes the most sense. Just to allow some roster flexibility in case of injuries, you have to give these teams the ability to keep some guys, maybe not on your roster, but they can still participate in team activities. Because again, if they can't participate in team activities, like we've talked about a bunch in the last week and a half, how are they going to be ready if a guy gets hurt and you need to call on him? I do think you're going to see a DL type or injury, report type system brought into college baseball if that gets brought in. If you're allowed to keep maybe 6 extra guys off your roster, then they're going to have some kind of DL thing. Because then if schools can just add one guy, bring one guy off all the time, it doesn't really hold. It's basically a 40-man roster at that point. But if you make it to where you have to, let's say a guy has a strain and he's going to be out 2 weeks, you put him on the 14-day or 15-day DL. He has to stay on the DL for 15 days. And for those 15 days, you can have someone from that ghost roster onto the main roster. I think that's where we're gonna head. Who knows? But I think the NCAA's got to help these guys out a little bit because these kids are young. Arm injuries that are at an all-time high every year. And typically you're going to have a few pitchers get hurt in the fall, minimum. You're going to have a few pitchers get hurt in the fall who are going to either miss the whole season or at least a good portion of the season. And so then you're down to 32 already. And you haven't even finished fall. You haven't started your spring workouts, and you haven't started the season yet. and you're going to have position players go down. And so it's just like they got to have more room to be flexible in this. Ostrander says, I think this is important. I really do. Talking about the extra guys. But Ostrander or Orloff does say he thinks that high-power programs won't recruit as many true freshmen, which is a trend that would allow non-Power 4 programs such as his Anteaters to secure higher caliber high schoolers. And again, you're seeing this already. Guys that maybe 9 years ago, not even 8, 9 years, 5 years ago would have been Power 4 players are going D2 or they're going mid-major or lower D1. So I do think you're going to see the talent level at those schools go up even further because you can't bring in that many freshmen with the roster size alone and with how many people are in the portal. And the big schools are just going to go get the best portal guys. They're going to get the best pitchers, the best power bats, the best overall bats. And so Orloff continues, if they're recruiting less freshmen in theory, there should be more of them available, which seems like good news for a lot of us who recruit the high school player, meaning we're still recruiting a lot of high schoolers. We don't go in the portal that much. On a 34-man roster, I'm not sure what the number of freshmen is that will allow you to be really good, but I'm sure it's going to be 5, 6, 7, 8 at the top-end schools. So there are going to be a lot more players in the pool, right? And if you see, what you have to see is Canes, like me and you've discussed, they're still going to be the top-end schools are going to have maybe 15, 16 commits. But I do think at least in a year or two, players are going to start understanding this and making smarter decisions because they have to know, man, they got 10 guys committed already. Like, I don't know if it's going to be easy for me to not make the team, let alone be in the starting lineup or get a lot of innings as a pitcher. And so I do think you are going to see that shift happen as parents and players become more aware of what's going on, that they start making decisions. You know what? I'm going to that mid-major, even though I got a couple Power 4 offers. Like, I'm going to have a better chance at this place. Buckley said teams that choose to bring in fewer players beyond the 34 limit could also gain advantages in the recruiting process. I still think you could get away with making a lot of cuts because of the allure of going to your dream school means something. So he's saying, like, these Power 4 schools that are dream-type schools for a lot of players, they're still going to get away with bringing in a lot of guys because, well, you wanted to play at your dream school. You made the decision. Like, we had to cut some guys. We don't want to cut guys, but we have to. That's the rules. But there are a lot of places that won't do that. They're not going to bring in a lot of guys, and there is a level for everybody. Realizing that will be really, really important. So, guys, what is Buckley saying? Now more than ever, and it's already been the case, but it's certainly the case now, you got to know where the best fit is for you. You got to know if you have a legitimate shot at playing at a school or if you're kind of a low-tier player for them that's going to be depth, right? Because this decision wasn't nearly as impactful 5 years ago before the portal and before NIL and before these roster changes. Like, if you were a freshman that got recruited, you were on scholarship, you were pretty certain you were going to be on the team. 95% of the time, you were going to be on the team, unless you messed up in academics or off the field or whatever. Now you have guys that are performing well in the fall and on scholarship, and hey, we don't got a spot for you. Right? So Buckley's really emphasizing, guys, like, have someone in your corner that knows the current system, knows the coaches, knows. Again, when I talk with coaches, I can get a really good sense, and a lot of times they'll just tell me straight up, man, we love this kid. We love him. We're all about him. And then you'll talk with some coaches and you feel like, man, he's really taking his time on this guy. He's taking a little bit to convince. I'm not sure if he's that sold on him, right? They may end up saying, we're going to offer him, but you don't get that sense that they really love him. That's information that just most players and parents don't have. And now more than ever, it's so important. So obviously the ABCA annual convention is coming up. We'll be there, going to be talking with coaches, probably going to do some streams from the ABCA. Hopefully we can get some coaches on while we're there. But even if not, we're going to be streaming from ABCA to talk about what's going on, any news that happens with these changes, any more fine print that comes out. So stay tuned for that. We just need clarity, Ostrander said. I'm not so worried about the numbers, but we need to figure out a system that puts the athlete first. athletes can be easily wowed, but ultimately forget the reality that could be coming. So athletes can be easily wowed by the offer and the facilities of a big time school, and then just kind of forget that they're going to cut a lot of guys in the fall. Like, you may not even get to witness a season at your dream school. There are still places that will look you in the eye and say, you can have a bad fall, but I'm going to keep you around and keep working with you. And you kind of get the sense that Ostrander's saying, we're that Southern Miss. We're still that place. We're that place where you can have a bad fall. We're going to stick around with you and keep working with you. ABCA is in something Harbor, Maryland, kind of around the DC area. Canes, I think it's up here. Let me see if it shows the exact location. It's said to convene in Washington, D.C., but it's kind of right on that border of like Maryland, Washington, D.C. It's in, I think, something Harbor, Maryland. I can't remember what it is, but we'll be there, and we're going to be talking with coaches throughout the day, and like it, maybe doing a later in the night stream where we've been talking to a bunch of coaches and tell you guys what they're saying. When you guys can ask questions to what's going on and what we're hearing, but should be really fun and really cool time. But that's the article, guys. I'm interested to see kind of what your guys' thoughts are on that, because isn't it funny? Like, all the stuff we've been bringing up for the last couple months, like that's what coaches are saying, and a lot of that is like I'm talking to coaches every day, so that's what I'm hearing. This is what our concerns are. Pretty much, I haven't heard one coach say, "Yeah, we love the fact that we have 34 roster now." No coach likes it, right? This was purely made by the NCAA because they were scared that the schools with a lot of NIL money or National Harbor. Yeah, Bill, that's right. Bill brings up National Harbor. I got to give him Bill. Welcome to the chat, man. Good to see you again. National Harbor, Maryland. Yep. But the NCAA came up with this decision. I'm sure maybe they talked with some coaches, but ultimately they made the decision because they thought the schools with the big NIL money and that are going to be able to go up close to 34 scholarships are going to have a huge advantage because they can just offer every player they want. Whereas in years past, you had to spread that out, right? You had to, 25% to this kid, 30% to this kid. But now, like I've told you guys, the golden number is you can get to 17 scholarships. So essentially just double or 50% higher than 11.7. You can offer every kid 50% if you want. And then with academic money and maybe a little bit of NIL, most guys would have like most of their school paid for. And you can compete with anybody at that point, right? You can compete with anybody at that point. So if you're a mid-major, like talking with Zeke Pinkham last week at Kent State's recruiting coordinator, he said, man, we're going to try to get to 18 or 19, which it's like, wow. I mean, Kent State will be, they already are every year, one of the top teams projected to win their conference. But if they can do that, I mean, they're going to be huge advantage in that conference, because I don't expect every team in that conference to be able to do anything close to that. And Zeke, I think, is going to do a terrific job there. He's a great recruiter, really good with catchers. Got to learn under James Ramsey at Georgia Tech, who's one of probably the top 3 hitting coaches in the country. So I think he's going to bring a lot of value to Kent State. And, he was one of those guys, Zeke, when he first started coaching, became the volunteer at Georgia Tech. That was my first year back from playing pro ball, and I was finishing my degree in coaching as well as an assistant coach. And we were roommates on the road. And, it's funny, like we'd be up all night till 2 or 3 in the morning. And this is something a lot of you guys don't know, that like coaches, when, night before a game or night before when you're on the road in the hotel, you're up until 3 in the morning watching video, trying to pick up tendencies, trying to pick up tips on the pitchers, writing reports on guys so you have as much information at your disposal for those games. And that's what Zeke and I would do almost every night when we were on the road. And really became a really good friend of mine. And it was interesting because he's younger than me, right? And he played in 2016, 2019. So he's 4 or 5 years younger than me. And he was just out of being a grad assistant at Louisville. And so we got to pick each other's brains about stuff. And I think he's going to do great at Kent State. Would be great to hear at ABCA how many schools are going to be staying at 11.7. I doubt we'll hear that. I mean, we may get a, we may get some inside info, but I doubt there's going to be schools kind of telling people or reporting it. Again, eventually that all will come out, Canes. I think everyone's kind of just playing coy right now and doesn't want other schools to know what they're working with. Because let's say if like Canes, like you mentioned with Clemson, if they are going to 34, and from what I've heard, they're doing everything they can to get there. That's their goal. I don't know if that's where they're going to be, but that's their goal. You don't want other schools in the ACC knowing that. Oh no, asking people privately. Okay, yeah, we could get that information again. Some schools are going to play coy and be like, "Well, we're gonna get more, but we're not sure how much," and kind of your typical political answer. But if you're Clemson and you're going to 34 next year, right? You don't want other ACC schools to know that because you want to at least have that advantage that first year, right? And eventually it's going to get out and schools, because then that puts that. So let's say you're Boston College or another ACC school. Now, as a coach, you got ammunition to go to your AD and say, listen, we're trying to win a conference championship. Clemson's going to 34 scholarships. They can offer everyone a full ride. And we're working with 14 or 15. And so then you got coaches have ammunition to kind of and leverage over an AD to be like, hey, like, if you're expecting us to win a championship and that's our goal and we're going to do everything we can, we got to have as much money as we can get. Like, we can't be playing 1 foot in, 1 foot out. We got to go all in. So if you're Clemson or another big ACC school that's going to be playing with a lot of money, you don't want other schools to know for as long as possible, because then you have a little bit of an advantage, right? Would be good to get everyone's number, and you can tell them you're running a private number to see what percentage of schools will be at certain numbers. Yeah. No, and again, like a lot of these guys I'm really good friends with, so like they're going to tell me. And I think we're going to have 4 or 5 of us from Elite Sports Advising up there. It's going to be me, Pat Pinkman from the Mid-Atlantic. Going to have Wally Crancer from the Southeast, my brother from the Southeast, Jordan Wren. I think John Murphy from the Northeast, and then maybe a few others. I'm not sure, but it's going to be we're going to be out networking, talking with coaches, going to some of the events, and hopefully we get some. I would assume the NCAA is going to make some announcements at the ABCA because you got all the coaches there. You might as well. Again, every coach is saying just give us clarity, man. Like we're not scared of the number. We know what we're going to have to deal with. But again, I think the biggest clarity that coaches need right now is, is there going to be anything that allows us to carry some extra guys and at least have them practice with us so they can stay ready in case we're just depleted by injury? Because guys, like my sophomore year in college when the roster was 35, the roster didn't have to be, you still had guys who were, not making the travel roster or making the spring roster, but they were still with the team and they could work out and redshirt guys or whatever. But that year in 2012, my sophomore year, we had 2 starters go down that were going to throw 80 to 100 innings from Dusty Isaacs, a good friend of mine. Why would they need to carry extra guys? Recruit position flexibility. 100%. That is, Dusty, if you had tuned in last week to hear from Zeke Pinkham, that's what he said. I mean, you got to recruit guys now that can play multiple positions. It's more so, Dusty, on the pitcher side, right? If you and I both know, in the fall, you're going to have pitchers go down, and you hope they're not season-ending injuries, but every year you have 2, 3, 4 pitchers go down in the fall. And so if you're at 34 and you have no one else to replace them, and you don't have something that's allowed where you may have a ghost roster of 6 guys who aren't on the team or aren't on the main roster, but they can still practice with the team and everything like that. Yeah. I mean, and again, Dusty, think about it like in inter squads, you need to get your guys at bats. You need to get your guys innings. And like, if you don't have extra guys in the fall, you can't inter squad as much as you want. Dusty says, got to stretch guys preseason. That's right, 100%. The issue is pitching coaches often don't know how. And that's a good point, right? Like you gotta ramp them up at the right pace. And then really the tough part is making sure they're staying on top of their throwing over the winter period when they're away from campus and they're not, from November, December, they can't work out with the team and they don't have baseball or they work out in the weight room, but they're not doing baseball activities. So they got to stay on top of their throwing program, especially when they go home. That's when every coach is sweating. And if they aren't getting their work in December and then they come in January and you're trying to ramp them up and all of a sudden an injury happens, it's tough. So I think the position player standpoint, it's not as big of a deal, right? You can recruit guys that are versatile position wise, but pitching, it's just a sense that, Dusty, there's going to be teams out there that have 7 or 8 guys go down in the pitching staff. And then it's like, what do you do? And maybe they're a 3-week-long injury or a 2-week-long injury, but if it's 2 or 3 or 4 of those guys, then you're going into a weekend series with 4 less guys in your bullpen, or you're missing a starter, so a bullpen guy has to cover, and he's not built up for it, so he's got to throw like 3 innings, and your bullpen's got to cover the rest. It just could be really tough on the pitching side. From Scott Denson, are coaches at smaller schools actually in favor of this roster size because it will bring more talent to those schools through high schoolers that are not going to Power 4 top base? I think that's one of the positives for smaller schools, Scott. I don't think any coach is excited about having 34 guys just for the things I've just mentioned. We don't know the fine print, all of it yet. So it could come out that, hey, they're going to allow you to carry extra guys that just can't play in the game unless injuries happen or whatever. But the one thing that is a positive for them is there are going to be more talented players going to the mid-majors and smaller D1s, especially as parents and players start to figure out that, committing to a Power 5 or Power 4 now, it's not, you're going to have to ball in the fall. Because you have a chance of getting cut, even if you're a scholarship guy. So I do think maybe you don't see that happen right now with the 26 guys who have been committed for the last year or two before the communication changes. But certainly in the future classes like the 27s, I do think you're going to see a lot of players who are more hesitant about Power 4, especially if all of a sudden you look at their recruiting class and they have 10 guys committed already in the 27 class, and let's say in September. Then you're thinking, well, they're going to have to cut some of those guys, and I don't want to be one of them. From Scott again. Or do smaller schools not like it either because they prefer to have a large roster than 34? So this is the other thing, Scott. The smaller schools in particular, they have the option of opting in to the 34-man roster. So basically, if you opt in, you get revenue share. So you get money from the NCAA from the overall revenue share, from your conference, stuff like that. What you're going to see with there's going to be a good percentage of smaller schools that decide not to opt in, and they can stay at a 40-man roster. They just don't get any percentage of revenue share. So they don't get money from the NCAA, but a lot of coaches would rather, and again, so you may get the added advantage of both, where players are not as likely to commit to the Power 4 because of the changes. So now you have a 40-man roster, you can recruit more guys out of high school. So it's just a factor of if the small school is going to opt in or not. Most of the small schools I think will probably not opt into it. And again, if you are not opted in, you cannot give any more than 11.7 scholarships as well. So if you don't opt in, you don't get more scholarships, you don't get revenue share. The bonus is you can stay at 40. You don't have to go to 34. But if you do opt in, you get revenue share, you can give more scholarships than 11.7, but your roster has to be 34. From Mark Miller. Will redshirting go away, or will it still be a part of a program? Seems like a great option for kids who want to get mature and not lose eligibility years. From what I've heard, yeah, it's still going to be a thing. It's just that's the thing, Mark. It's so confusing is that there's a lot of stuff that hasn't been clarified, right? The redshirting, as far as I'm aware, I haven't heard anything about you're not going to be able to redshirt anymore. And it may be, you're allowed to redshirt 6 guys a year, like Christian Ostrander brought up in the article. It may be that you're allowed to redshirt 6 guys a year. And the question becomes, the kid's redshirt. He won't lose a year of eligibility, but he also has the option if a player gets injured and he's going to miss significant enough time, that player can replace that guy on the roster, but his red shirt will probably be void at that point. But I think this is the other thing, Mark. It's not really advisable to take a red shirt at a big school now anymore, because you have to think about it like this. They're looking for proven talent. They want guys with track records. If you're getting red shirt as a freshman, that typically means you got outperformed by the other freshmen. If it's an injury, that's one thing. But if it's just you got redshirted, you typically were outperformed. And so you're going to have no track record to go on. And now they're going to bring in more freshmen next year and more portal guys. So it's like, it's tough. Redshirting is not what it was 5 or 6 years ago, where a kid could redshirt and then coaches still looked at him as like, man, next year he's going to be really good. Or in 2 years, he may really turn into something. We had Zeke Pinkham on last week from Kent State, and he said, excuse me, you're not recruiting anymore on a 2 to 3 year time frame. You're recruiting for next year. That's it. So a lot of those guys that get redshirt, Mark, in the spring, a lot of those guys probably are getting cut at the end of the season and are going in the portal. So it's just like, if your plan as a player, or if you're a parent thinking about this, the view of, well, I really want to go to the school. It's my dream school. And if I don't make the team, I can at least redshirt, and then maybe next year I'll get a shot. There's not a lot of that happening anymore. That's a very small percentage chance that that's going to be the likely outcome. The vast majority of the outcomes will be you get redshirted and you're cut, or December 1st, when they set the roster, they say, you probably should go in the portal. You're probably not going to play here, instead of giving you a red shirt, right? So if it's not an injury, if the red shirt doesn't come from an injury, then it's not a good sign. It's not a good sign, but it's a great question. And yeah, guys, so that article really, I think, makes a lot of great points, is that the real elephant in the room is the NCAA going to allow mid-year transfers to be eligible at Division I? Because if that happens, I think you're going to see the pay for play in college baseball just go up dramatically. Because like I said, you may lose out on a big time freshman, and all reports are saying he's balling out in the fall. And then he can transfer in the winter to a bigger school that's going to give him a lot of NIL money. I mean, you're going to see, I think coaches, like Kevin O'Sullivan brought it up in the article, but I don't think coaches will be big supporters of that, because they're already fed up with the portal and having to deal with losing their own guys to bigger schools or schools in their conference or schools in the SEC or the ACC. So if you make that allowable in the winter transfer period, you're in for a world of hurt. And so the next things I wanted to cover is, how can you make the adjustments now in your recruiting process? Guys, it's so important now, like at the Power 4 level, unless you are a stud, it's going to be very difficult. Again, if you're a pitcher, you're not as impacted by this. If you're a pitcher and you can throw strikes and you can hover around 90 as a right-handed pitcher, you're in a really good spot. Because if you can throw strikes, you're going to pitch. That's just the reality. They're not really recruiting guys that can't throw strikes anymore, just because the strike zone's way smaller in college baseball now. But if you're a pitcher and you're projectable and you hover around 90 and you can command at least one off speed for a strike plus your fastball, you're probably going to be fine. But position players are the ones who are really, really being impacted, because, again, it's the hardest thing to predict is if a guy's going to be able to come in and perform as a hitter. Dusty and I were part of a big recruiting class at Georgia Tech, and a lot of those guys that came in as hitters that were supposed to be really good didn't get hardly any playing time, ended up leaving or ended up not being on the team. And the reality is that you're just not recruiting a lot of freshmen anymore. You're just not. And so if you're a position player, that is a decision you got to make, is do I value playing time over experience? Meaning the college experience, meaning the facilities, the campus, everything like that. Because it's way more valuable for you to go to maybe a lower level school, put up big time numbers, and maybe you love it there. Maybe you stay there. I'm never going to advise someone to leave, but you do have that option now. You have that option now, and that's what schools are looking for. Like, they want guys that are coming from D2 or JUCO or the lower level D1s that have put up numbers. Because, like I've told you guys before, when the portal first became a thing, a lot of coaches were hesitant to go after Division II, D3, JUCO, and not as much JUCO, but especially those lower level Division II, Division III, because you weren't sure, are these numbers going to translate to the ACC or the SEC or the Big 12? And what they've found is that, yeah, those numbers are translating. And guys that hit 340 with 12 home runs, they're hitting 330 with 12 home runs or 11 home runs, 10 home runs. So they're not scared to recruit those guys. Last year, UConn had 5 or 6 D3 players in their starting lineup as position players. And they were in the NCAA tournament. So they competed, right? So it's way better that you go to a lower level school and get at bats and get in-game experience than going to a Power 4 and getting cut December 1st, and now you're in limbo. You have no idea what to do. I'm interested to hear kind of what you guys' thoughts are on that, because I think there's a lot of parents out there now that are still a little bit, I don't want to say delusional, but they're just not up to date with how really things are working. And they think, well, my son's kind of the outlier, and he's going to be the guy that goes and starts at a Power 4 school. And it's like this is the problem, and you guys have heard me say this before. You may even look at a recruiting class and think, well, they only have one guy at Tommy's position that's committed there, so he's just fighting against that guy. Well, 2 weeks before you get to campus, they could bring in 5 extra portal guys and 2 of them at your position, and then those 2 guys have 500 at-bats under their belt, 250 at-bats under their belt, and they've put up numbers in the college level. Those guys are going to be looked at as potential fits for a starting spot over the freshman, unless the freshman just balls out, because they know that this guy's got a track record of hitting in college. The freshman, he better really look good in the fall. And what we're hearing is you better really look good in the fall just to keep your spot, just to keep from getting cut. From Aris Reyes, welcome back, Aris. If I'm going to be if I'm going to be on the bench without knowing I'm playing, I better go where I can play and develop. No one develops seated. Reyes, 100%, man. I think a lot of players think, and again, it's not to say that you can't improve at some pace from working hard in practice and, working hard in the weight room, stuff like that. But nothing is a substitute for in-game experience, because if you've never been up to the plate in the bottom of the 9th with 2 outs and the tying run on 3rd and a loud crowd cheering and trying to get in your head, that first time it happens as a freshman, you're going to have nerves. And a lot of freshmen, they can't handle it, right? They put too much pressure on themselves. They can't come up in the big moment. The guy with the proven track record has been in situations similar to that. It's not going to affect him as much as a guy who, just got out of high school. Especially as a freshman, when now more than ever, you always had kind of a short leash as a freshman to kind of show what you can do if you're in the starting lineup. Those first couple weekends, you better show something or another guy's going to get a spot. Well, now, let's say you are a freshman that wins out a spot, beats out a portal guy. Well, all of a sudden, you're 2 for 15 in your first 3 or 4 games. Coaching staff may say, let's give the portal guy a shot tonight. See what he does. And then he goes 3 for 4. He's in the lineup again the next day. So the leash is even shorter now for a freshman to show what they can do. Canes. I've been debating to DMR commits. Most follow me. Yeah, you're big time in the Canes community, man. About continuing to work after their senior season so they can make it harder on the coaches to cut kids. Yeah, I mean, that's a good idea, man. I think a lot of kids now, like we've talked about with Miami Canes, like bringing guys early on campus to get them acclimated in the summer. and get them working with a strength coach, like that's fine, but it's better to get playing time in the summer with the summer ball team and just get as many at-bats or innings as you can. Obviously, as a pitcher, like make sure you're not doing too much so you're ready for the fall. But if you're coming in and you haven't played any summer ball and you've just been working out and you're on campus, you've been working out and doing some, BP and stuff, that first week or two of inter squads is going to be a pretty big adjustment period. Whereas if you 2 days before you step on campus, you played a summer ball tournament, you're ready to go. There's still going to be a gap between when the inter squads start, but at least, it hasn't been 4 months since you last saw a live arm, which is what some guys do. They think, and I made a video about this, a lot of you guys saw, but a lot of guys think, well, I never really got a summer before, and I've been playing travel ball my whole high school career. I'm just going to take the summer off and relax and chill with my friends. And it's like, I understand it, but you can't do that anymore. Most guys that did that ended up not playing as freshmen, but now you almost got no shot because you're just coming in you're coming in having to play catch up in such a big way. Because these college guys that are coming back in to fight for spots, they've been playing summer ball all summer with a wood bat or been throwing innings. Canes, and about playing summer ball so we can make the coaches' jobs very difficult about who to cut. End of the day, as a fan, I want to win, and how we win is to have everyone performing to their maximum. 100%, dude. 100%. 100%. I mean, as a coach, that's, again, you hate it. It's tough when you got to cut a kid and you feel like all these guys are working hard and they're performing pretty well. But that's what you want, right? You want the cream to rise to the top, and you want the best of the best. And so if everyone's coming in and they're in tip-top shape, you're seeing them at their best, your evaluations are going to be more accurate, right? When kids come in and they're not ready and they're playing catch-up, maybe that kid would have ended up being really good, but he came in behind the 8 ball because he wasn't doing what he needed to do in the summer. And now you can't really make an accurate evaluation of him because it took him 3 weeks to get going. And he finished strong the last couple weeks, but he ended up hitting 230 in the fall because those first 3 weeks were rough. From Maurice, there are different routes to reach your destination. If you are a great player anywhere, you're going to be seen. If you remember, in the Dominican Republic, it's about development. They practice 5 days a week and play once a week. 100%. Dominican. And the thing is, Maurice, like Dominicans are just like, I mean, one thing about Dominicans where the development is so good is like they're playing on fields that, playing surfaces aren't great. They're making do with what equipment they can. So, I mean, those guys there's a reason that the Dominicans, Venezuelans, and Puerto Ricans, they come in and they can make every play defensively. It's because they're not, you get to these big-time college fields and it's pristine playing surface, no bad hops, the dirt's perfect, and they're used to playing on not a pristine surface and dirt giving you bad hops. They're going to pick everything. And 100%, the Dominican, as soon as you sign as a 16-year-old, I mean, it's all about development. Like it's about getting better. It's not about winning until you get to the big leagues at that point. Or Buck B, I'll get to you next, Bill. Buck B, should this mostly affect top-tier recruiting? If you guys were D1 Power 4 before, now go D1 mid-major, but then more experienced guys that are mid-majors, sophomore transfers to D1 Power 4 and spots open up for Frosh for D2, D3. It's going to affect everybody. It's just going to be kind of a trickle-down. It's like trickle-down baseball recruiting now. Your top-tier guys are still going to go Power 4. But those guys that are just outside the top tier, what I call kind of a tier 2 player, which is kind of what I was not a top 100 player in the country by any means. If you're outside that top 100, top 150, top 200, it doesn't mean, again, I ended up being one of the best players in my recruiting class. And some of those tier 1 players were never sniffed a field, top 100 guys. But it's just, if coaches are going to make, again, they're going to look for the guys that they think can come in and really, really impact the lineup. And so guys that are outside of that tier are going to go, again, they may still get recruited. They may still get offers, but it may not be the best decision to go to a Power 4 if you're outside of that tier 1 level. If you want to bet on yourself, that's fine, right? But again, a player like me may not in today's era may not have had the option to go into Georgia Tech. I may have had to go to a Mercer or Kennesaw State, which are still really, really great programs. But again, I just may not even have had the option to go into Power 4. And And certainly you go to a D1, you go to a mid-major, a really good mid-major, you're going to have a better chance to play. But a lot of freshmen there are getting cut as well, because a lot of the there's really two strategies that mid-majors are doing right now. It's either they're really going all in on high schoolers because they feel like we're not really getting the impact guys out of the portal, so we might as well go for higher tier high school players that aren't getting recruited anymore by the Power Fours, or the mid-majors are going all in the portal and just bringing in a bunch of portal guys. So it just depends on the mid-major. Bill, we chose the JUCO route specifically for playing time and better opportunities later. The coaches also made it clear how much they wanted my son. With all the changes, we feel good about the decision. Yeah, and I mean, Bill, the JUCO route and high D2 route is such a good route for the majority of high school players now, because in JUCO, like Bill, I mean, you're playing a good fall schedule, you're playing spring schedule, you're getting way more at bats in game or innings in game. And that's what coaches are looking for. They're looking for guys that have put up a lot of innings or a lot of at-bats with good numbers from the JUCO level that they can plug in right away. And typically your JUCO guys are going to be a little more hard-nosed, right? They're grindy because the facilities at JUCOs aren't what they are at the Power Four. And, they're traveling. The traveling's a lot more difficult. And so your JUCO guys, they're called JUCO bandits for a reason, because you bring them in, they're going to be pushing other guys in your team that maybe aren't as tough. They're grindy. They're hard-nosed. They're going to play hard. Chris Cannon, does D1 still need to recruit high school players? Yes. Yeah, D1 definitely is still recruiting high school players. It's going to be less, right? There's just going to be less. And you may not see that in this 26 class, right? There's still a lot of schools with a lot of commits in the 26 class. Now, a lot of those guys are probably going to end up getting cut. But certainly in the 27 class and the 28 class, we're going to see, come August 1st, we'll see the 27 commits start rolling in. And we'll have an idea of, okay, what's a Tennessee in the 27 class? What are they going to bring in? I'm going to be talking to Josh Elander later in the week, as long as we can get every timing confirmed and everything. But I'll be talking to him tomorrow about it when he wants to come on. But maybe he can give us a glimpse of what's going to be the difference between, now that these changes are out, what's going to be the difference in recruiting for 27s, right? Are you guys going to bring in a smaller number of the 27 class than in years past? So we'll have answers on that. Definitely at the ABCA this year, we'll be asking that question. So Chris, just stay tuned with us. Again, daily, I do a daily stream at this time where we talk about updates and what coaches are saying. D1 still recruiting high school players. It's just going to be a smaller amount. And what I'm telling guys, Chris, is if you're a position player, make yourself as versatile as possible position-wise. Play as many positions as you can. If you're a shortstop, take fly balls in the outfield. Take reps at second. Take reps at third. If you're a center fielder and you're right-handed, start taking ground balls, man. If you can play second and third too, you're making it easier for coaching staff to keep you on the roster, making it way easier for yourself to get on the travel roster for the road games, and potentially a starting role, right? Because if you're proficient at multiple positions, they may have a stud at your position, but they need it. They got a hole at this position, and you can fill it, right? So that's what, as you're a high school player, or your son's a high school player, make yourself as versatile as possible. From Buck, in many ways, this system is becoming a lot like European soccer. Kids in their teens sign with academies, then go to lower tier pro clubs, and if they develop, they get pulled to the big clubs. It's similar. Yeah, I mean, it is kind of getting to that point, Buck, because at the college level now, I mean, I had a video came out about it last week, but I mean, college baseball is professional baseball now, right? At a lot of levels. Your Power Four levels, guys are getting paid. Lower levels they're not really getting paid, but you have the ability, like you said, Buck, to go to kind of a lower level club or lower level D1 or D2 or JUCO, and then all of a sudden you put up the numbers. Another school can pick you up, and you may be getting paid to play college baseball. And it's kind of like, it's funny, as soon as the minor league teams were, a lot of minor league teams were basically deleted, right? Because the draft was made smaller, so you don't need as many players in the minor leagues, so you don't need as many teams. And then as soon as that happened, college baseball started kind of morphing into the semi-professional league. But you're spot on with that, Buck. I mean, it is kind of, it's different, but it's similar, right, in a lot of ways. And so, great point. Great point. It is really a lot like the kind of European soccer leagues. And again, you think about like travel ball, it's kind of like those lower level academies, right? In European soccer, you're 16 years old, you're playing for travel ball. They have again, most travel ball teams have decent connections regionally. Um, they usually don't have like the coast to coast connections, like for instance that we do, but they have certain connections and they can kind of connect you with schools in that region that you may end up getting an offer from. And then it's like you're going up the ladder now. So the ladder doesn't just exist in the minor leagues now. It exists in college baseball as well. So great point. Yeah, actually, I'm interested to hear from you guys kind of what questions do you guys want asked of coaches at the ABCA? What are your guys' thoughts on the questions, things you want answered? Like I said, I'll be doing my best to do streams from there. I'm hoping hotel Wi-Fi and everything will cooperate, but they're probably going to be maybe evening streams, right? Because all day we're going to be talking with coaches and at the events. And so every night we may have a kind of overview of what went on in the day and what coaches said. And I'm going to try to get some coaches on those interviews as well. Maybe in the hotel room with me, just answering questions. And it should be fun. I'm interested to see. I may put a poll up or just a post on our YouTube channel. If you guys aren't subscribed to our YouTube channel, it's make sure I can get this exact at Elite Sports Advising ESA. If you aren't subscribed there, not on top of the daily streams, I have daily videos that come out. So if you're not a subscriber, go to that account, subscribe, hit the notification button so you get notified when our new videos drop. A lot of it's going to be updates in college baseball. Some of it's going to be development for your son or yourself as a player, what they should be focusing on, things that can improve them right away as players. And then ultimately coaches, what coaches are saying. And then when we get into the season, we'll also be talking about college baseball in the season and how those are going, how teams are shaking up. Obviously, we'll do that. Talk about that on the live streams. Canes. That scholarship question from BA would be a great one to find out about if it's different at each school division. Yeah, 100%. 100%, Canes. I'll mark that down. Matt Austin, what impact does this have on D2, D3 JUCO? It just means, Matt, that there's going to be better players at those levels. That's all it means. D2s now, you're going to see more guys leaving from the portal, right? You're going to see more guys going to D2 with the intention of getting on the field right away, building a track record, putting up big numbers, and then going in the portal trying to go Division I. There's a lot of players that are still kind of like they have that D1 or bust mentality. I do see that changing in the next year because it's just going to become more of a reality that, again, that's just not the best decision for a lot of kids. And you still have the ability to go Division I. You may just need to go to a D2 and ball out for a year or two. And at least then when you commit to a school out of the portal, you're kind of a shoe-in for a starting spot. You're not fighting for your life to just make the roster. Kane's helping out in the chat. They're only going to get better players. Exactly right. They're just going to get better players. D2s. And again, I think it's D2 and JUCO and D3 are slept on with the talent level at those levels. Now, there's certain conferences of Division II and Division III that are better than others, just like Division I. But certainly a University of Tampa or North Greenville or Young Harris has the type of roster. These are teams that are playing for the D2 World Series, that are in the D2 tournament every year. They're 40-plus games, win 40-plus games a year. Those guys can compete with Division Is, right? They may not have quite the depth, but they would be competitive games. So I think people sleep on it. Oh, well, that's a D2 school. They're not better than any D1. Tampa's better than most D1s, right? I mean, Tampa's better than most D1s, but people just don't really know that. From Buck, for coaches, what skills attributes are their priority now in recruiting, given all these changes and less is on development, more on next year? They're looking for polished guys, Buck. I had Zeke Pinkham from Kent State, one of the best mid-majors in the Midwest, on last week. And what he specifically said is they're looking for versatility in position players, right? They're looking two-way guys now, way more valuable. The caveat is you got to be legit at both, right? You got to be both. It's not like, oh, he's a really good shortstop and we could probably put him on a mound. It's more like, man, he's a good pitcher and he's a really good shortstop. Like we're getting double value here. Or man, this guy can play all over the field. Pitchers specifically, they're looking for guys that can fill up the zone and they have enough velo. They could care less. And I get so much hate on social media for this because there's just so many people out there that just have no clue what they're talking about. And they think, well, if you throw 94, you're going to go to Tennessee or you're going to go to Georgia Tech or you're going to go to Auburn. And the reality is if you throw 94, but like you have no idea where it's going or not even no idea where it's going, you just can't throw strikes fairly consistently, you're not getting recruited anymore. You're going to have to go to a JUCO and prove that you have command because you can't afford now with 34 guys on a roster to have a guy that you can't depend on. So they'd much rather see a guy who's high 80s, maybe touching 90, 91, who commands 3 pitches for a strike than a guy who throws 94, but his off speed, he has no idea what he's doing with his off speed. Off speed's okay, and his fastball command's not great. They'd rather go with the high 80s, touching 90 guy that's got 3 pitches for strikes. Every time last season, I do broadcasts for ACC Network for a lot of the Georgia Tech games and some SEC games. Every time a guy was throwing like high 80s, right-handed pitcher, and he could throw his changeup and his slider for a strike, he went 7 innings. Because college hitters just aren't good enough to know, again, if your approach isn't good enough, that guy's going to eat you alive. If you don't know what your focus is at the plate, he's going to eat you alive. Because you're like, if you're up there trying to hit everything, you're going to hit nothing, as Steve Springer says. PG has historically been, and too much in my opinion, focused on physical attributes, thinking they can develop a raw kid. Seems like that might be changing. Yeah, and this is something I put a video out. Something I put out, Buck, is that the PG ratings and the prep baseball ratings, like they do as good a job as they can, right? And those are important, at least for a school to be able to see what your metrics are. For my clients, I recommend, one of those a year. You don't need to go to 4 of them. You don't need to do one every 3 months. Go to one a year, update your metrics. So at least coaches, if they're hearing about you or I talk to them about you, they can go to your profile and see, oh, okay, yeah, metrics match up with what Kyle's saying. Yeah, I mean, it looks like we want to go see this kid. But that is the blind spot of prep baseball and PG. Now they do have a lot of guys on the ground that are trying to get the in-game evaluations, so that plays a role. But with most high school kids, your ranking on those sites is going to be heavily based on your physical attributes, your fastball velocity, your exit velocity, your 60 time, your arm strength, stuff like that. Coaches are never going to offer a kid just because his PG profile looks good. They're going to go see him in game. They're going to see if he's a baseball player. This is, again, what a lot of parents and players get wrong is they go to like 3 or 4 of these a year and spend $3,000 because they think, well, if I keep making my rank higher, I'm going to get offers. And the reality is no coach is offering you based on your PG rank. No coach. They're offering you because they maybe saw your PG profile, but if they come and watch you and, man, you're not a baseball player and you don't throw strikes and you don't command the strike zone as a hitter and feel like you're in control of your at-bat and put up quality at-bats and play good defense, that's the other blind spot is the defensive part. Is those showcases, you have no idea how good of a defender a guy is. You just know he's got a good arm and he can run. You can't tell from a showcase how good a defender is. And the difference between a really good defender and your average defender in high school is like astronomical, right? Your average high school shortstop will never play shortstop in college. Probably isn't capable of playing at a Division II, the shortstop. So the difference between a college shortstop and a high school shortstop is massive. Massive. And that's, again, I mean, like you could be a highly ranked guy on Perfect Game or Prep Baseball, but defensively, if you're not good at your position, you're not going to get recruited by the schools you think you're going to get recruited. And they are not only getting better, and they are only getting better and better, the rankings. Yeah. And what I would say, Canes, is like both of these companies, Perfect Game, Prep Baseball, they do have a lot of guys on the ground watching players, but they can't see everybody, right? They can't watch everybody, so it's never going to be perfect. PG recently moved to what they're calling prospect gateways away from the showcases. As far as I can tell, the big difference is they do the measurables, but also then to have you play 3 to 5 games to eval. That's awesome. If that's true, because again, and even in 3 to 5 games, like this is the issue, is baseball is a long distance sport, meaning in college you're playing 60 games. In professional baseball, you're playing 150 plus games. So you could have, like, you're going to have stretches in college. You're going to have stretches in maybe one of these showcases where you don't look great in the game. You look like you can't hit. And then the next game in a tournament, you go 4 for 4. So I do like that model better, where guys are getting their measurables done and then they're playing games where a bunch of evaluators. And again, this is the other thing. And I don't want to make it look like I'm bashing a lot of the employees at Perfect Game or Prep Baseball. A lot of those guys don't know what they're looking at. You know, but I mean, that, like, if you never, again, a lot of these guys are interns that are 18 years old out of high school, or college players from like a D2 or something, and they don't really know what they're looking at. You don't have like a professional scout watching a player or a college coach. Now, you do have some former college coaches, and those guys are good. But a lot of the guys that are doing the on-the-ground work day by day, do they know some? Yeah. Do they know that like exit velocity is kind of important? Yeah. But can they really give you a high level evaluation of a guy they just saw and tell you where he fits and stuff? It's not a perfect system. That's fine. But like, that's the reality, is that a lot of the guys doing evaluation just kind of don't have the required experience to really have a really good objective view of it. I suspect it might be due to these changes. I'm taking my son to one in Fort Myers over the break, so report back what I see. Awesome, dude. Awesome. I'd love to hear how it goes. And I'd love to see what you think, like not only how it's run, but how many guys do they have on the ground doing the evaluation stuff? Because again, if you got like one guy watching a game, he's going to miss guys, man. He's not going to be able to watch everything. He's focusing on the pitcher. He's focusing on the hitter. Is he going to be able to see? Again, a lot of this is intangibles, right? Like, is that center fielder making an adjustment position defensively because this hitter's late? Is he moving to the opposite field? Or, does this guy, is he backing up? He's backing up every throw. This outfielder's backing up every throw. He's backing up every play. Or second baseman's backing up a throw from the third baseman. Stuff like that, where that stuff means a lot to college coaches. It shows he's got a baseball IQ. He knows situations, knows what he's supposed to do on every play. So again, it'll never be perfect, but I'm interested to hear, Buck, how it goes. From Maurice, some of those companies like PG, they fill with PED your profile. I will say this, and I think I know what you're saying, Aris. One of the most eye-opening things I ever saw was a couple years ago. You're seeing these guys run like six flat 60s, 5.9 60s, 6.1, which is like you're basically an Olympic sprinter at that level. And I go to one of these showcases at East Cobb. It's a bit, it's one of the national showcases. They had the laser set up, but the kid didn't start at the first gate of lasers. He got a 10-yard head start. And as most of you guys know, when you're sprinting, those first 10 yards are the slowest you are, because you're trying to get up to top speed. So no wonder, and I'm sure not every showcase is run like that. I hope they're not. But certainly, again, some of these, and I'll say at that same showcase, again, so those 60 times were all crazy off, right? Because if you're taking away the slowest time of the 60, those kids are all not nearly as fast as those 60 times say. And that is kind of what you see when they get to school, right? You kind of see guys who, on PG, he was throwing 92, and now he's like sitting high 80s. Or in PG, he sat 92, 94, and now he's like top in 91. You see that a lot in college, guys that come in that are supposed to be really fast or they're supposed to have a cannon. At that same showcase, I was watching, outfielders throw from the outfield. And out of like, let's say 30 guys, 40 guys, I think I marked down like maybe 2 or 3 of them with a good arm, 2 or 3 of them, where it came out looking good. It had carry, everything like that. And then I went through afterward the velo of the outfielders, and they were like all 88 or high 80s, which is a good arm. And I'm thinking something's not right. So I don't know. I don't want to make the accusation that they're juicing some of the numbers, but I mean, if the 60 time is being run like that, those numbers are juiced. And certainly from the arms I saw, there weren't that many guys with that good arms. BA, is junior year summer a good time to attend specific college camps? Is senior year on the late side? Yeah, senior year is on the late side. I would say, honestly, BA, the best time is really that sophomore fall, because coaches are all going to be back on campus. There's going to be the actual coaches at the camps. And that's when they're looking for guys too, right? So once that communication date's open, it's a sophomore fall, that's a good time to go to 3 or 4 camps, right? And like one of the things we do at Elite Sports Advising is first of all, we've been in contact with schools for as long as you've been working with us. So they know who you are. And then we recommend, based on the feedback we're getting from your video, or maybe they got to see you play, all right, this camp's going to be valuable, that camp, maybe 3 or 4. But certainly that's the best time. The summer showcase or summer camps are actually not great, BA, because a lot of times coaches, like they're out at the summer leagues, college summer leagues, they're out recruiting the high school tournaments. So it may be being run by like a grad assistant or like a player development guy, which he's still like, he's a coach, right? But he's not like a decision maker. He's not a decision maker. So it's just those summer camps usually are not as valuable. Because you're kind of just rolling the dice if the coaches are going to be there or not. Like, whereas if you're working with us, we reach out to the staff and are like, hey, is any one of you guys going to be at this camp? Like this player is going to be really good. I'm curious to see what you think. That's how we combat it. But again, it's like, if you don't have someone like us working with you, you're kind of rolling the dice in the summer. Agreed on quality of the evaluators. We went to one this summer in the Northeast, and it was a bunch of random high school travel coaches more interested in recruiting than eval, hoping a major one in Florida is better. Yeah, I mean, and that's just the reality. I mean, it's like I walk around these places, and again, it's not to say that you had to play at a high level to be a good evaluator. It's a good sign that you know what you're looking at, right? Like, I think that's where this whole conversation goes off the rails is I don't think there's really anyone saying, well, if you didn't play at a high level or coach at a high level or whatever, you don't have the eye. It's not that. It's just that it's way more likely that you don't have the eye. And the fact is that a lot of recruiters out there are not great recruiters. There's a lot of college coaches that, are out of school for 3 years and they don't bring in good players and they lose and then they're done. So it's not that you need that experience to have the ability to make an accurate evaluation. It's just, it really helps if you have experience like that. Agreed on the quality of PG evaluators. Okay, same one. Yeah, I mean, I'm interested to hear how that goes, Buck, because I do think that's a better model, because some of these showcases have like one game. You play one game or whatever, and it's like you could have a kid. And most of these things, you're playing one game, and you may, in one of these showcases, you may be up against like one of the top 10 pitchers in the country. He's going to dominate you. That's how most high school hitters are going to get dominated by a really good pitcher. And so you may still end up being you may be a really good hitter, but you face the guy throwing 97. So how do you evaluate the player? Well, you look at his swing. You look at, is he swinging at balls? Is he swinging at strikes? Does he look like he has an approach at the plate? I tell guys all the time, a coach can come watch you play. I tell every position player client this. You don't have to go 3 for 4 to impress a coach. Kids think I got to hit a bomb. I got to hit 2 doubles. I got to get 3 hits or the coach isn't going to like me. No, what he's looking for in a hitter is consistency. So can you put the ball in the barrel, right? You may hit one deep fly out. He likes that. You may line out somewhere. He likes that. You may hit a hard ground ball somewhere. He likes that. He's looking for consistency in that. He's looking for, does he have an approach? Does he look like he's hunting a pitch? Does he look like he's in control of the strike zone? Right? Who's in control of the at-bat? Is it the pitcher or is it him? Is he chasing a bunch of stuff out of the zone? That's what they're looking for in a hitter. Consistency. Is every at-bat kind of the same, meaning he looks like he knows what he's doing up there. He puts a barrel on the ball pretty consistently, stuff like that. And so again, I tell all my clients, you can go 0 for 3 with a walk and really impress the coach. You went, you barreled a ball to the shortstop, out. You hit a ball deep to the warning track in left center, out. You end up having an 8-pitch at bat and striking out. Okay, you fought. You had a long professional at bat, and then you worked an at bat into a walk. He's gonna walk away thinking, I love that kid. I like that kid. I got to see him again. Man, every at bat was good. He put the barrel on the ball a few times. Like, man, he looked good. The problem is a lot of high schoolers out there are trying to do way too much. They see a coach behind home plate, or they work with an advisor or something like that, and so they know schools are coming to the game, and they try to do way too much. And then again, the other thing is body language, guys. Zeke Pinkham brought this up. I said, Zeke, what's one thing you're evaluating a kid that's going to make you just write his name off your list? And he says, I can't deal with bad body language. Like, you get out in your first at bat and you're pouting in the dugout, dragging your feet, and then it affects you on defense. He's like, I can't do it. It's going to annoy me as a coach to see it, and I don't want to have to deal with that. So part of what we do is preparing these kids for how to look like a professional on the baseball field and play every game like there's a coach there. Guys, I've been at games where coaches were there to watch a player, not one of my clients, but just a player. I'm sitting with the coaches, and they're telling me, hey, I'm kind of on this kid. And he grounds to second base, never runs 100%, jogs the whole way, gets thrown out by 25 feet. And the coaches go, you know how much you got to impress that guy now the rest of the game to get him on your side after he saw that crap? A lot. You got to impress him a lot. Right? So part of it is just preparing these kids for what coaches are looking for. Because I think there's a lot of guys around travel baseball and everything that we all know that just aren't telling kids, don't know what coaches are looking for. And so they're telling a kid, hey, Georgia Tech's here. Hey, just make sure, hey, ball out. Let's go, ball out. And so now the kid thinks, I gotta have this massive game, when it's just, that's not the reality. And I want to give a shout out to Jeff White, one of my former clients' dads, who sent me this article that we talked about today to discuss for the show today. Colin is a 26, committed to Georgia Tech. Probably one of the best left-handed pitchers in the country. So Jeff, I appreciate you doing that. Bill, helps to work out, especially on a daily basis, next to a Mike Bordick, Walt Weiss caliber. As an evaluator, you catch the fine details and movements, even if it's from 30 years ago. 100%. I like the old scouts that they tell you is, he reminds me of this guy. And that's what my dad said. One of the things that major league teams have lost now is they don't, and not all of them, but certainly a large majority of them, they don't have these old 30-year scouts that are like, man, that guy, he reminds me of, like you said, Mike Bordick. Or man, that guy, he's just like Walt Weiss. His swing is just like that. Because that knowledge was like, man, that guy reminds me of this guy, and that guy had a 15-year big league career or whatever. And so like you said, it helps, Bill, because when I see players, when I work with them, advising them through the recruiting process, or I see players in college baseball, I say it all the time. Like, I'll give you an example. So one of the starting pitchers for Georgia Tech last year, when he was a freshman, he ended up getting drafted. Man, his name's just escaping me right now. But tall, high waist. And I'm like, this guy, I mean, he's like exactly like Amir Garrett, who came up with the Reds and I played against and was teammates with in big camp with the Reds. And so it helps when you have that kind of Rolodex of knowledge in the back of your mind, because you're like, man, that guy reminds me just of that guy. And that's something that just a lot of people that are doing these evaluations don't have. It does for the most people. It takes a seasoned eye to be able to look at a swing. Like, I'm pretty confident I can look at a swing, not slow motion, no data involved, no blast motion, no nodes hooked up to him to get the motion capture, and tell you if I think he's got a good swing or not, and if it's going to produce high contact, low contact rate, power, no power, etc. Give me a side angle and let me watch him 10 swings. I'll tell you probably where his issues are and where they're not. And then let me get behind home plate and see how his direction looks. Again, it doesn't take, at least for some guys, a lot of these guys doing evaluation for PBR or PG, they make evaluations based on the metrics or the performance, right? And we all know the metrics can lie. Their performance can lie, because you may have seen the guy on his best day, but what does he look like on a normal day? What does he look like on a normal day? That's what I want to know. I don't, like, everyone at their best looks great, right? I want to know what he looks like on a normal day. And a lot of these coaches, they're not just recruiting you based on, they're not just recruiting your, the type of player you are. They're recruiting the type of person you are. Are you a good teammate? When you're on the mound and your shortstop botches a routine play, do you throw your hands up in the air or look pissed off on the mound? Or do you say, hey, man, hey, get him next time. Let's get, hey, we're getting out of this. Dude, that's if the coaches will be like, man, this kid's a good teammate, man. He's a good kid. Right? And that pays dividends. What I tell guys all the time is I think they think you're either recruited or you're not. The reality is, for each of you guys, each school that's talking to you, they're probably talking to 2 or 3 other guys at your same position. And so if you have the most integrity, you play the hardest, you're the best teammate, and you're about on par with the rest of those guys, you're probably the guy they're going to go with. But if you're the guy that they showed up and you jogged the whole way to first base when you grounded out to second, or you fly out to right and you don't even get to first base by the time the guy catches it, your chances just went down. Or you're the guy slamming your helmet in the dugout. You don't know how to deal with failure. You don't know how to just kind of move on to the next at bat. Those are red flags that they're looking for, right? They're recruiting how tough you are mentally as well. And what I see now, I mean, on a daily basis during the summer, is a lot of bad teammates, a lot of guys that are only in it for themselves, a lot of guys that have no idea how to deal with failure, a lot of guys who are cussing at umpires in high school, pitchers who are striking out a guy in the first inning and then cussing out the opposing dugout. You may think that makes you look like a tough guy in a BA, like our chatter BA. It's a giant red flag for coaches, because those guys typically, the guys that are kind of, again, if you're a tough guy, the fake tough guys are the ones that want to do all this kind of outward expression of toughness. Like, I'm going to cuss out the dugout when I strike out the side. Usually that guy's not very mentally tough. He just wants you to think he's tough. And then the next inning, when you get crushed for 4 runs, and then now the opposing team's ragging on you because you started it, and then he's out by the 3rd inning. I saw that all the time last year in college baseball and summer ball. Guys, pitchers walking off the mound, strutting, talking trash to the hitter, or staring down the hitter, talking trash to the dugout, and then 2 innings later, they're out of the game, and the bullpen's got to pick up the slack because they couldn't handle it. It's a red flag. And what's bad is that a lot of these social media accounts for travel baseball and PG and PBR, they're slinging that stuff out. Oh, the pitcher that talked trash. And they're kind of hyping it up too, like it's a good thing. So that's kind of the state we're in. A few more minutes before I got to jump off. I have a call with a client coming up. Show this video I'm about to tag you in. All right, let me see here. You better tag me quick, Canes. Are you tagging my account, my personal account? Let me see. Okay, here we go. I found it. All right, so Canes, this is a video from Canes, and he's saying, we want more recruits like this.
Baseball players, he rolled.
100%. And look at that. He's almost safe. And that's what I tell guys all the time. Like, you're going to get 2 or 3 extra hits a year because you sprint every time you hit a ball on the ground. Because one time the defender is going to be lackadaisical, or it's going to get stuck in his glove for half a second. And if you're jogging, you're never going to get a hit. But if you're sprinting like this, and he takes just a 1/10 of a second longer, he might have beat it too. I think he might have been safe, Canes, but 100%. That's the kind of stuff that college coaches will drool over you for. This is how you're supposed to run. 100%. 100%. That's our 2025 shortstop commit, Mario Magana from my high school. He's a top 50 player on PG. So you're hoping he doesn't get drafted, Canes. I know you are. You're hoping he didn't get taken from you. Guys, I'm going to end it there. Great conversations today. Again, we'll be back tomorrow around the same time. If you are looking for help in the recruiting process, scan the QR code. Again, we'll meet with you totally free, give you an evaluation, talk about what we do, why we've had so much success in the recruiting process with our clients, and ultimately see if moving forward and working with us is the right fit for you guys and ourselves as well. So appreciate all the support, guys. Again, go to our YouTube channel, Elite Sports Advising ESA. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the notification button so you see anytime we go live or our videos come out. Share this stream with your friends. Share this account with your friends. I appreciate all the support. One last comment from Canes before we go. Running like that, he's getting drafted. Yeah,